Okay, so now let's get into our lesson now that we've done our warm-up. We're going to start with the application problem, so I want you to pause the video, figure out the problem, press play when you're ready to check your work. Make sure you do your absolute best and make sure you try to figure it out before you just listen to me explain it to you. Okay, so pause the video, press play when you're ready. So here we have our application problem. Nuri spent 9/12 of his money on a book and the rest of his money on a pencil. Express how much of his money he spent on the pencil in fourths. Nuri started with $1. How much did he spend on the pencil? So if we look at this question, we can see that in part A, we have to express how much of his money he spent on the pencil in fourths. So we're trying to figure out how many fourths are in the fraction that he spent. He spent 9/12 of his money. How can we write 9/12 as fourths? So in other words, what is equivalent? What would 9/12 be equivalent to in fourths? So we can write that out just like we would our number sentence that we've done so many times. Just like this. And we know that they're asking for fourths. So since they're asking for fourths here, we know that we want to end up with a 4 in the denominator. Now, our fraction is starting with 12, and we want to get to 4. I want you to think. Would I multiply 12 by something to end up with 4? Or would I divide 12 by something to end up with 4? I would divide because 4 is smaller than 12. I want to get smaller. So again, whatever I do to the denominator, I have to do to the numerator. I'm going to rewrite my fraction here. Now, what can I divide 12 by to get to 4? Let's see if I can skip count by 4 to get to 12. 4, 8, 12. I can. That means 4 is a factor of 12. 4 times 3 equals 12, which means 12 divided by 3 equals 4. Perfect. Whatever I do to the bottom, I have to do to the top. Now I have to check my work. Is 3 a factor of 9? Indeed it is. 3 times 3 equals 9, which means 9 divided by 3 equals 3. Okay, so part A is done. I have expressed his money that he spent on the pencil. Oh, wait a second. I have to reread this. Reread this because he spent 9/12 of his money on a book. And I want to know how much of his money he spent on the pencil. So what I figured out right here is that he spent 3/4 of his money on a book. Now, if he spent 3/4 of his money on a book and the rest of the pencil, what's rest of my fraction? If there's my fourths, and 3 of them, let's say purple means it's a book, 3 of them were spent on the book, what's left to be spent on the pencil? Right, 1 out of 4. So that means that Nuri spent 1/4 of his money on the pencil. Tricky. It almost tricked me. I hope it didn't trick you. Okay, part B. Nuri started with $1. How much did he spend on the pencil? Ooh, good question. Okay, So $1 is our whole. In other words, 4 out of 4 parts is equal to $1. Now, how can I break up my dollar into fourths? I wonder. How might you break up your dollar into fourths? Well, if I think about it in terms of money, I know that there's 100 coins in my dollar. How can I divide that by 4 to figure out 1/4 of my dollar? Four goes into 100 25 times. And in money, is there something that's worth 25 cents? A quarter. Wait a second. A quarter. Quarter as in quarters. Football games are split into quarters because there's 4 parts. $1 is split into quarters because there's 4 quarters in $1. That's a way to remember it. So there's 25 cents. And so 1/4 equals 25 cents. A C with a line through it means cents. So Nuri started with $1. How much did he spend on the pencil? Well, he spent 1/4 on the pencil because he spent 3/4 on the book. So that means he spent 25 cents on the pencil. Okay, so here's our area model that shows us 10/12. We know that it shows us 10/12 because if we counted the pieces, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 are shaded, 11, 12 in total. I want to simplify this fraction by drawing to find a common factor and relate it to division. So key words here are common factor. I want to find a common factor. I want something that I can divide both 10 and 12 by because it fits into both of those numbers evenly. So something that can fit into my numerator and my denominator evenly, because remember, whatever I do to one part of my fraction, I have to do to the other. So I'm going to start by writing my number sentence. 10/12 equals. Okay, now I have to simplify this fraction by finding a common factor. I want you to pause the video, give it a try yourself. Press play when you're ready to check your work. Remember, we're using division, not multiplication. So our pieces in our whole are getting larger. All right, well, if you've done it already, that means you can press play and we can go over it. Again, the trick I taught you earlier was that I know 10 and 12 are both even numbers, which means that they can both be divided by 2. 10 can be divided by 2, 12 can be divided by 2. 10 divided by 2 gives me 5. 12 divided by 2 gives me 6. So my simplified fraction, this is my lowest term. 2 is my common factor because they could both be divided evenly by 2. My simplified fraction is 5/6. Okay, and we can do this by looking at our model. If we took away the horizontal line and made the pieces larger and said that's one piece instead of 2, that's one piece instead of 2. all the way through, then we would see that we have a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pieces, meaning their denominator is 6, and 5 of them are shaded. That is why 5/6 equals 10/12. Okay, now here's our number sentence. 6/10 equals 6/10. Our common factor is 2 because you can divide 6 by 2 and you can divide 10 by 2. They're even, so you know you can divide them both by 2, and that equals 3/5. Now I want you to, in your notes, draw an area model to show how this number sentence is true. I want you to pause the video, press play when you're ready. Okay, so here are some ways that we could have drawn an area model and we could have shown that this number sentence is true. In the first example, we have 5 pieces on each side, which gives us 10 pieces total, and we have 6 of them shaded in. And then we've grouped them by 2 each. Okay, so there's 2 parts, 2 pieces in each group, and that shows us that there's now 3 total shaded in pieces and 5 in all. Okay, the second model also correct, just drawn and broken up a little differently. 5 on each side, 10 total, and then a line down the middle. And we can see that they've grouped them in groups of 2. So 6/10 becomes 3/5. Same thing, last version over here towards the right of the screen. You have 10 total pieces, split them down the middle horizontally, and you can see that they have shown us that they've grouped their pieces together. When they group them 2 in each piece, we get 3 pieces shaded in, and there's 5 total. Okay, so draw an area model to represent 8/12 and rename 8/12 using larger fractional units. Hey, if our pieces are getting larger, are we dividing or are we multiplying? I hope you said dividing, because that means that we are getting less pieces in our whole. Our pieces are getting larger, we are dividing. So pause the video, press play when you're ready. I want you to draw an area model to represent 8/12. Then rename 8/12 using a larger fractional unit, meaning divide 8/12 and simplify the fraction. Find the equivalent fraction using division. Pause the video, press play when you're ready. All right. So, with your models and your work, what happens when I use 4 as a common factor instead of 2? What happens when I use 4 as my common factor instead of 2? Because I'm sure a lot of you must have gone, well, 8's an even number and 12 is an even number, so I know that I can use 2 as my common factor. Now I want you to do it again if you haven't already, and I want you to use 4 as your common factor. And what happens to the units? What happens to the picture when you use 4 as a common factor? And of course, write them as 2 division number sentences. So here's our first division number sentence. We used 4 as our common factor. 8 divided by 4 equals 2. 12 divided by 4 equals 3. Since 4 can go into both 8 and 12 evenly, it is in fact a common factor. And then we have 2 as a common factor. Now, in quizzes, you're going to have 2 questions about these. Pay very close attention. I want you to tell me what happens when we used 4 as a common factor and what happened when we used 2 as a common factor. What was the difference? Okay. So go ahead and go with your quizzes, answer the questions in there, and then we'll have a problem set to do.